The spoon froze halfway to his mouth. For a brief second, time itself seemed to stop. Billionaire businessman Ethan Cole sat alone at the long dining table in his grand mansion, surrounded by things most people could only dream of: polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, walls decorated with priceless art. Yet none of it mattered. To him, it was all just darkness. 6 months ago, Ethan Cole had lost his sight. Not in an accident, not because of age, not even due to a disease. One morning, the world had simply faded. At first, it was small, blurred edges, dull colors. Then shadows. Then nothing. Doctors from different countries examined him, ran expensive tests, and held serious meetings behind closed doors. But every answer was the same. We don't know why. No injury. No infection. No medical explanation. And now, the man who once ruled boardrooms and billion-dollar deals sat helpless, lifting a spoon toward his mouth, guided only by memory. That's when he heard it. "Sir, please don't eat that." The voice was soft but urgent. Ethan's hand stopped midair. His fingers tightened around the spoon. "Who's there?" he asked, his voice calm but cautious. "It's me," the girl said. "Maya. I clean the West Wing." He recognized the voice now, quiet, respectful, almost invisible. She had worked in a mansion for months, rarely speaking unless spoken to. "What is it?" Ethan asked, forcing a small smile. "Did something spill?" There was a pause. Then she spoke again, slower this time, as if choosing every word carefully. "Sir, you're not blind." Ethan let out a short, confused laugh. "I'm afraid the doctors would disagree with you." "It's not your eyes," she continued. "It's your wife. She put something in your food." The words hung in the air like a sudden storm. Silence filled the dining room. Heavy, uncomfortable, dangerous. Ethan's smile faded. "That's a serious thing to say," he replied, his tone tightening. "My wife, Laura, takes care of everything. She makes sure I eat on time. She never leaves my side." "I know," Maya said quietly. "That's why no one notices." Ethan shook his head. "You're mistaken." Maya didn't raise her voice. She didn't argue. She didn't accuse. She simply stepped closer and said one last thing, soft but sharp enough to cut through his thoughts. "Then why do you feel worse every time you eat with her?" Ethan had no answer. Maya turned and walked away, her footsteps fading down the hallway. Ethan slowly lowered the spoon back onto the table. His appetite was gone. His heart was racing. For the first time in 6 months, the darkness around him felt different. That night, lying alone in his bed, Ethan didn't sleep. Because doubt, once planted, never stays silent. Ethan had built his empire from nothing. No inheritance, no shortcuts, just sharp instincts, sleepless nights, and a fearless hunger to win. By 40, his name alone could move markets. People listened when he spoke. Rooms fell silent when he entered. He was a man who controlled everything around him. Then one morning, the world began to disappear. At first, it felt harmless, just a blur at the edges of his vision. Streetlights looked dull. Faces lost their sharpness. Ethan blamed exhaustion, stress, too much work. But days passed, and the blur thickened. Colors faded. Shadows stretched. Darkness crept in like an uninvited guest. Within weeks, Ethan could no longer read his own phone. He bumped into furniture he'd memorized for years. Panic set in. Doctors ran tests. Specialists flew in from abroad. Machines beeped. Charts were studied. The verdict came quietly, almost apologetically. Legally blind. No injury. No disease. No explanation. The man who once saw opportunities before anyone else could now see nothing at all. That was when Laura stepped forward. His wife became his eyes, his voice, his world. She dressed him every morning, carefully choosing his suits. She read his emails aloud, deciding which ones mattered and which didn't. She managed his medications, handing him pills with practiced confidence. She even controlled his schedule. Who could visit, who couldn't, who needed to wait. Ethan leaned on her completely. What choice did he have? People admired her devotion. At charity events and business meetings, guests whispered in admiration. She's incredible. So loyal. He's lucky to have her. Laura smiled graciously, always holding Ethan's arm just a little too tightly. Everyone praised her. Everyone except Maya. Maya was just a cleaner. She worked early mornings and late evenings, moving quietly through the mansion, her presence barely noticed. She spoke little, kept her head down, and listened more than she talked. But Maya saw things others missed. She noticed how Ethan's face tightened after meals, how he rubbed his temples as if fighting a growing pain, how his hands trembled when he stood up from the dining table. She noticed a pattern. Every time Ethan ate, the headaches followed. Every time he took his medicine, his condition worsened. His vision never improved, only declined. Slowly, consistently. Maya also noticed something else. Laura never allowed anyone else into the kitchen. No chefs, no assistants, no substitutions. If Laura wasn't cooking, Ethan wasn't eating. Once, Maya overheard a chef offer to help. Laura's response was sharp, immediate. "I'll handle it," she said. Maya remembered the look on her face, not loving, not caring, but controlled, protective of something she didn't want shared. That was when Maya understood. This wasn't illness. This was something else. And the longer Ethan trusted the wrong person, the darker his world would become. Maya had a painful past. It was the kind of past that taught you to notice small details, the kind most people ignored. Her mother had once worked as a nurse in a public hospital. Long shifts, low pay, endless exhaustion. But she had always warned Maya about dangers that didn't look dangerous at first. "There are poisons that don't kill you fast," her mother used to say. "They come quietly. Small doses. Every day. Hard to detect. Easy to hide." She called it slow poisoning. Maya never forgot those words. Years later, standing silently in Ethan Cole's mansion, those memories returned with terrifying clarity. One evening, while cleaning near the kitchen, Maya stopped mid-step. Laura stood at the counter, her back turned. Maya watched as Laura took a small container from her purse, unscrewed it calmly, and crushed something between a spoon and the counter. The powder disappeared into Ethan's soup with a gentle stir. No panique, no hositashchen, just routine. Maya's heart dropped. Her hands went cold. For a moment, she wanted to scream, to confront her, to expose everything right there. But she didn't, because she knew something important. If she accused Laura without proof, no one would believe her. So Maya waited. She watched. She listened. She connected the dots. And when Ethan was alone, when Laura wasn't there to guide his steps or control the room, Maya finally spoke. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. At first, Ethan didn't believe her. He laughed softly, the way people do when the truth feels too impossible to accept. "My wife loves me," he said. "She's all I have now." Maya didn't argue. She simply planted the seed. And doubt, once planted, is powerful. That night, Ethan lay awake, replaying every detail of his illness. The headaches, the shaking hands, the timing. The next morning, he made a quiet decision. Without telling Laura, Ethan asked the chef to prepare his meal privately. He pretended the food came from his wife, ate slowly, carefully, watching his body for signs he had learned to fear. Nothing happened. No headache, no dizziness, no trembling. That night, something extraordinary happened. As Ethan sat alone in his room, staring into the darkness he had grown used to, a faint glow appeared. Just a flicker, barely noticeable, but real. His breath caught. His heart pounded. He blinked again, and there it was. Light, weak, unclear, but unmistakable. Ethan's hands began to tremble, not from illness this time, but from shock. Tears filled his eyes as he whispered to himself, "I can see." For the first time in months, hope broke through the darkness. And in that moment, Ethan knew the truth. Maya had been right, and the person he trusted most had been slowly stealing his world away. Ethan hired a private medical team in secret, not the doctors Laura approved of, not the specialists she carefully selected. This time, he chose people who answered only to him. Late one night, under the cover of silence, a team of trusted doctors arrived at the mansion. Blood samples were taken. Scans were run. Every test was done quietly, quickly, and without Laura's knowledge. Ethan waited. Each hour felt heavier than the last. When the results finally came in, The lead doctor's voice was low and serious. "Mr. Cole," he said, "what we found explains everything. There were toxic substances in Ethan's system. Not enough to kill him. Not enough to raise alarms in routine tests. But enough, over time, to slowly damage his nervous system. Enough to steal his sight. These chemicals are introduced in very small doses," the doctor explained. "They're designed to avoid detection while causing gradual harm." Ethan's chest tightened. "Where did they come from?" he asked quietly. The answer landed like a blow. "Your food." The room went silent. In that moment, every doubt Ethan had been fighting became undeniable truth. Within days, authorities were alerted. Evidence was collected. Security footage was reviewed. Financial records were examined. The case against Laura was airtight. She was arrested that same week. When police arrived at the mansion, Laura didn't scream. She didn't resist. She adjusted her coat calmly, as if this were just another inconvenience in her carefully planned life. Her motives soon became clear: money, control, power. Investigators discovered legal documents already prepared, papers that would declare Ethan permanently disabled. Once signed, full control of his billion-dollar empire would pass to her. She had planned everything: the poisoning, the isolation, the slow disappearance of the man she married. During the confrontation, Laura finally faced Ethan in the same room. For the first time in months, he stood without fear. She didn't cry. She smiled. A thin, cold smile. "You were easier to manage in the dark," she said. "You stopped asking questions. You trusted me completely." The words echoed in the room. Ethan said nothing. He didn't shout. He didn't accuse. He didn't beg for explanations. He was too busy realizing one terrifying truth. The person he trusted most, the woman who held his hand, guided his steps, spoke for him, had nearly destroyed him. Not out of anger, but out of greed. As Laura was led away in handcuffs, Ethan remained still, his expression unreadable. His world had almost vanished, not because of fate or illness, but because of betrayal hidden behind love. And in that silence, one thing became clear to him. Losing his sight had been painful, but discovering who his wife truly was, that was the real darkness. Months passed. Slowly, quietly, life began to return to Ethan Cole. It didn't happen overnight. There was no miracle moment where the darkness vanished all at once. Instead, his vision came back the same way it had been taken, from the shadows, little by little. At first, it was light, a soft glow behind closed eyelids, the outline of a window, the vague shape of a door. Doctors called it progress. Ethan called it hope. Not fully, but enough. Enough to walk without fear. Enough to recognize faces again. Enough to reclaim pieces of a life that had almost been stolen from him. One morning, months after Laura's arrest, Ethan stood in the hallway of the rehabilitation center, holding his cane loosely in his hand. The doctor watched closely as Ethan took a few careful steps forward. Then another. Then another. He stopped, straightened his back, and gently placed the cane against the wall. For the first time, he walked on his own. As he reached the doorway, his eyes adjusted, and that's when he saw her. Maya stood quietly near the door, just as she always had. No spotlight, no applause, just presence. Ethan's throat tightened. "You saved my life," he said, his voice low but steady. Maya shook her head immediately. "No," she replied softly. "I just spoke the truth." But Ethan knew better. After everything he had been through, he understood how rare truth really was. Ethan changed many things after that. He stepped back from the ruthless pace of business that had once consumed him. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to breathe. He rebuilt his company from the inside out, this time with transparency, accountability, and safeguards that protected people at every level, not just those at the top. And he funded programs for workers whose voices were often ignored. The cleaners, assistants, guards, and staff who saw everything but were rarely heard. Because Ethan had learned something the hard way. Power doesn't always sit at the head of the table. Sometimes it stands quietly in the corner. Maya didn't stay a cleaner. Ethan made sure of that. Not as charity, but as recognition. She was offered education, training, and a future she never thought possible. She became something more, not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. As for Ethan, the scars never fully disappeared. Some days were harder than others. Some memories still hurt. But his sight, both physical and emotional, had changed forever. Because sometimes, the person who saves you is the one everyone overlooks. And sometimes, darkness isn't caused by blindness, but by betrayal, asterisk, asterisk. And when the truth finally comes to light, it doesn't just restore vision, it restores the soul.